Hey everyone, this is Tony here, going live with my, let's see, this is the 5th video in my E3D ToolChanger build live stream series. I'm kind of hiding here behind the printer at the moment to position the camera. Hey Dottis, for this video, because I'm not going to leave this here. I'm going to move the printer out of the way for this one. But I wanted to start with it out. Actually, I'll turn it around real quick. And this is a beast. Thing's heavy. Get it facing the camera there. Hey guys, Dottis, Brian. So here's where I left it last time. I got the docks and the tool changer installed. The first video was the unboxing, then the XY motion, then the docks and the tool changer. If you haven't seen those, go check them out on my YouTube channel. Might answer questions if you have any on the build or the components or how it's gone. Today I'm going to assemble the actual V6 hot ends that attach here. They use the new threaded mount. Those I think it's a 13mm threaded coupler that attaches to the heatsink. Yeah, Brian pointed out, hey Greg, I have a cold and I did take some Sudafed. I've had a cold for a few days now and my voice has gone in and out a little bit. I'm sneezing a lot and coughing. So this is going to be a fun video. My head's not exactly clear, but I got tired of waiting on getting this build done because this printer looks amazing and I want to get it moving. So I'm live streaming with a cold. So if I say something really dumb, I can blame it on that this time. So I'd like to start out all these videos by thanking, first of all, E3D for letting me participate in the beta. Greg, thank you again. Sanjay, pretty awesome to be a part of. And if anybody isn't aware, I helped design and create the Railcore 2 3D printer, and my goal in participating in this beta is not only to give feedback to E3D, but also to figure out how we can add their tool changer to our printer. So thank them for supporting that effort as well. They're fully in favor of it. I do think their platform is quite nice though. So that'll be interesting to kind of compare the two at the end. Thanks again to Duet and Phyllis Struder for their help in providing parts for the beta and some discounts. That's helped me out a lot. And a huge thanks to everybody that did donate towards the R&D funds that made this possible. I could not afford this out of pocket. This is not my day job. And so thank you to everyone who donated. And I'll put up a donation link to the Railcore R&D in general in the YouTube video afterwards. So thanks to everybody that's helped me participate in the beta. Before I start building the tools, I want to ask if anybody has any questions on the build up to this point since the last video. The last one I did was the tool changer install. Kind of watch and see if there are any questions there. The one thing I did do since that video is I got some smaller Allen keys. The Allen key required for that that grub screw I had difficulty with. I couldn't even get this. Here, I'll hold it up to the camera. It's a 0.9mm Allen key. It's nearly a needle that's required for that grub screw. So I did get that and tighten that down as best I could. The one question I have gotten both on YouTube and a couple emails and some messages on Twitter is people want to know what I'm thinking about adapting this to the Railcore platform. And you know, obviously their Y carriage is quite different than ours. The spacing is different. The length of this pin that latches in the tools is quite critical to the design. So I'm not sure how we're going to adapt that to our design yet. I have some ideas, but I have nothing concrete at this point. I need to play with it more and figure out. I want to see theirs in action before I make any commitments to how I'm going to put this on their X carriage onto what is our Y. Sure, I'll give a quick close-up of the assembled X carriage here. So this is the front view. So here's your servo. This is the pin I was talking about. Comes out here, has a bolt in the end. This is the switch for homing, Z homing. And then this is the other side of the plate. It has some pins here to center the ball bearings that sit on the ToolChanger parts. So that's kind of the view of it. You can see it's pretty narrow here, and that's going to be a lot of the challenge. Is this spacing compared to our Y carriage? This is going to be interesting. And it's a critical spacing. It's critical that these two are straight up and down from each other. So that's where the challenge is going to be. Probably mostly involved will be a redesign of this plate that holds the servo, and some complete alternate form of this connector. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. I'm hoping we can use this entire front plate, but we'll see. Here's a view of the underside of it. So you can see the servo drives the that central pin to turn it using a pair of gears there. So that is that. Put this back up here. Hopefully that's positioned well. I'll probably need to move the camera here when I get going anyway. So I'm gonna pick this up and move it off of this table so I make some room to build the V6 tools. I don't need this in the way to do that. This thing is quite heavy. Okay, so I set that in another room. Actually, let's move the camera down a little closer here. My awesome Logitech webcam. How can we do this? Hopefully that's a good view of the table. I need to get a laptop out that has the build instructions here. I'm going to try and build them where you guys can see them. So I have a bunch of boxes of parts for all these V6 hot ends. They're all identical. I got 5 of them. They sent me an extra one. A little bonus. And for those that don't know, Greg that's chiming in is from E3D, so when he says something, he knows because he designed this printer. Just going to get the contents of one box out at a time, I suppose. The others here beside me. So I have that printer is quite the printer. So this is the threaded heatsink. Hopefully you guys can see this well. It has a plastic nut. I want to say they're 13 millimeter. So the ToolChanger uses that standard V6 block nozzle, heat break, standard fittings there, standard V6 universal fittings kit. Anybody that's built a V6, we have the fan and the heater cartridge there. They do include a nice little layer cooling blower. It's a 30 millimeter blower fan. Let's see here, we have, if I can get it out of the package, a set of screws and bolts. And then we have the really interesting bits. This is the hot end pickup plate. I'm not sure exactly what they call that, but it's the tool plate to pick up the tool. Like I said, it has three bearings press fit into it, and a locking plate for the pin in the ToolChanger to grab. And then this is the part that the V6 seats up into to attach to the holder. Raise this camera up just slightly. I think that'll help. Here we have a small electronics PCB, all pre-soldered and ready to go. And yeah, if you haven't used the threaded heatsink yet, it is very easy to work with. It's much easier to do things like loosen up, turn it a little bit, tighten it back up to reposition how you want the hot end turned. You don't need to slide it in and then lock it in place, so it has more freedom with how you mount it. I've worked with it a little bit on my rail core with a printed mount, and it works very well. I do plan to get that printed mount milled out of aluminum at some point. Just hasn't happened yet. And then lastly, Greg, someone the other day asked what plastic this is either injection molded or milled out of. I wasn't sure what it is, but there's a plastic fitting. It's POM. Okay, there we go. So this is a spacer that goes up above. So that's all the components, and we're going to build one of these, and Greg can yell at me when I miss something, although hopefully I won't. This laptop I'm using for the documentation is the one I use for my CNC, and it's kind of a small screen. Makes it interesting. So tools needed: 3 millimeter, a 2.5 millimeter, a 2 millimeter, and a 1.5 millimeter Allen key. I checked. I have all of those, so we're good this time on Allen keys. Parts: a V6 Bowden toolkit, a V6 threaded heatsink hot end kit, and a set of V6 Bowden 3D printed parts. I have those. So here are the 3D printed parts. And I think that's all of them. I think it's 4 per V6. So not exactly sure how they all fit on yet, but we'll figure that out as we go, obviously. This one is the only one I know for sure. That's the hot end fan shrub. These appear to match up pretty well with that. So yeah, we'll figure that out. I don't know, Jeff, you're pretty abusive sometimes too. So in fairness, it's a toss-up. Let's see here. I can't page down for some reason. To begin, gather a tool plate, V6 dock bracket, V7 heat sink bracket. Do we have V7 now, Greg? Or M6 6mm grub screw and 5 M3 8mm countersunk screws. So I'll assume all the screws are in here. Just going to dump those onto a paper towel. Yeah, your documentation says it's the V7 heatsink bracket. Just a typo. Okay. So apply a small amount of thread lock to the grub screw. That is a big grub screw. Feed the grub screw into the V6 dock bracket as shown. Make sure I have the right yeah, just a typo, Greg. Or is it? Going to cause all kinds of problems for Greg. Okay, so it shows inserting the grub screw. There's a notch. It's going to be very hard to show this, but maybe you can see there's a notch here. You stick the Allen wrench through into the grub screw, and then you feed the grub screw down through the bottom of that. And I need a little bit of Loctite on there first. No, folks, you heard it here first. Greg said V7. We have a screenshot. Okay, feed the grub screw into the V6 dock bracket as shown. Place the V6 dock bracket onto a flat surface and screw the grub screw so it is level with the end of the bracket. So I need to oh, I see what he's saying. So just put this against something solid and feed the grub screw all the way down so it's level against the bottom of that. Done. I'm going to use this aluminum plate. There we go. Clean up the excess thread lock there. So we just thread that into the plastic part, and that's that, Greg? That's what it appears. Cool. Heatsink. Attach the heatsink to the V6 heatsink bracket as shown. How long do I need to wait for that to cure enough to install it? I do have super glue here beside me. Is it going to cure enough by the end of the video to proceed, or should I switch to super glue for it? Oh. There you go. Is that better? All right. He says use super glue. Roll it around to get that thread lock out of there some. couple little dabs of super glue there. I should have put it through that first. Okay, thread that back in. Super glue off my fingers. Okay, so it's even with the bottom surface of it and super glued in. Okay, attach the heatsink to the V6 heatsink bracket as shown. Use a plastic nut here. There we go. Pretty straightforward. Apply a small amount of thread lock to 2 countersunk screws. Countersunk screws on the bracket. Okay, so he's talking the flathead bolts. Affix the heatsink bracket to the tool plate as shown. So it will go in the center to, grab the right thing. It will go into the center to, turn it the right way, points of the plate like so. Kind of give you a preview there. So, hello to everyone who's joining. Thanks for tuning in. Just getting the first hot end assembled here. I warned everybody earlier, I have a cold, so I'm even slower than usual. And if I say anything incredibly, incorrect, I'll blame it on that. So through the center hole here, into the mount. And Greg, I did see some chatter on the Slack channel about it being easier to build the mount where you assemble the V6 outside of the mount and then attach it. Has there been any consensus on which way is easier, or I'm just following the manual for now, but I wondered if there was any thought about that. Okay, so there's my plate attached, 2 bolts in the center there. Yeah, I'll do it by the book with the first one, and then maybe I'll switch it on the second one, and we'll see which I find easier to do. So just snug those down. But that's that step done. There's a note there about refer to the V6 assembly for guidance. I'm not sure what that's referring to. Affix the V6 dock bracket to the tool plate as shown. Remember to apply thread lock to the 2 countersunk screws. So this has a kind of hold this up here. On the tool plate, there is a flange that sticks out on the back that corresponds to this front bearing. I need to line up this this cutout that I mentioned earlier on the POM part so that it clears that bracket. Just got to put some thread lock on 2 more flathead M3s. That is not thread lock, that's super glue. Yeah, I have 4 of these to do, so hopefully we'll get some process improvement as I go through them. Yeah, all the ToolChanger switching is pretty much handled through macros on the Duet side. For a tool change, when you do any kind of filament change on the Duet, there's a pre and a post, and then a tool file. So you get 3 chances to like preset a temperature, set a standby temperature, move around where you need to when you swap tools, and it's per tool dependent. So you can say, go here, drop off the tool I have, tool 0, and then I'm picking up tool 3, so move over here and pick up tool 3. And all the slicer has to say is T0, T1, T2, T3. That's the goal anyway. Any slicer that can handle 4 tools should be able to do it. So if you're only using 2, you just send T0 or T1 and it'll swap between them. I think S3D is probably a little better, and KISS is pretty good about handling things like different nozzle sizes and things like that. But that's part of what we're exploring in the beta, is how the slicers can handle things. Yes, the Slicer P, pretty much any of them can. Cura can handle multiple tools just fine. But that's part of what the beta is feeling out, is how all that goes in the slicer. Okay, so back to this. I attached the dock bracket using 2 more M3 bolts, and tighten that down. So assemble the V6 hot side as shown. This is familiar to anyone who has ever assembled an E3D V6. Pretty standard here. Make sure I get that the right side up. Yeah. Heat break down into it, and I always take it so the heat break is just flush to the top, and then screw the nozzle in up to meet the heat break while preventing the heat break from turning. And that gives me the correct spacing. I know there's a thing about turn the nozzle in, unscrew it a quarter turn or whatever it is, but I find your end goal is just to get the heat break. If I can get that turn right, so it's flush to the top of the heat block from what I understand of the design, and that works very well. So cool, Greg. And then I have an actual torque wrench. I mention this periodically. I don't have it handy right now. But on Amazon, you can search for a Venzo. It's a torque wrench made for carbon fiber bikes. It's about $40. It is perfect for torquing down the E3D nozzles. You can set it to 2.5 Newton meters of torque, and it's ideal for it. It's like it was made for a standard socket fits right on it. So I can link that in the description if anybody needs that. Okay, so back to this. Where's my heater? Yeah, I periodically see people complain that they get filament leaking out. It's not properly torqued in, they do it by hand and kind of guess, and I have never had anything like that happen, and I've always used a torque wrench. It works really well. Let me see if I can find that real quick and show you guys what it looks like. I think it's in this toolbox right here, if I can get it open. Nope, not there. Well, if I can find where I put it. I'd show it to you, but I can't. There's a case for it. Let's see if I put it in this case. I'm sure I didn't. No. But yeah, it's a Venzo brand torque wrench. There you go. So I'll link that in the video description. Okay, back to this. So he has me putting the heater on this side. And where is the fitting? So kind of interesting, Greg. In the pictures you have in the manual, instead of a grub screw, you have something else, a different kind of bolt holding the heater cartridge in. Should I just go ahead and use the grub screw per normal? I don't see that bolt. Need some? So. Wait and see if Greg has any comment on the grub screw versus bolt thing, because I don't see a bolt similar to what I see in the images. So I assume the standard grub screw to hold in the heater is the way to go. Or not grub screw, M3. Yeah, the button head. Yeah, you have like a completely different bolt than that button head. Kind of threw me off for a second. Hey, look, more Allen keys to add to my collection. Ah, I got it. Try and get the heater block at least somewhat centered there. Snug that up so I can't turn the heater, but don't over tighten it. And this was one of the gotchas that some folks found in the build is you need to use PT100s instead of the thermistors. I do have PT100s here. I just have to find where I put them. I put them here before the video. And apparently I've already misplaced them. Huh. So much for my preparation. I literally, before the video went, I know I'm going to need those PT100s. I'll put them right here so I have them. And then I moved them, apparently. Yeah, that's no problem. I've been meaning to try the PT100s anyway. Oh, I know where I put them. They're in this box right here of all the Philistruder stuff that is under my desk. At the build table. I've been meaning to try the PT100s. They look interesting. Better solution. I just hadn't, so this is a good excuse to. Yeah, so from Philistruder, I got the PT100 board. It comes with a little plastic standoff thing. I'm not sure if that's needed. Got 2 of those. And I got 4 PT100 sensors. So here's PT100. Looks just like a thermistor. The differences in the case of this build. The reason that you can't just switch is the PT100 wire is longer and has a different connector on it, and the PCB was designed for the PT100 in mind. So that was the reason to switch. I don't know if they're going to look at making it an option or modifying the PCB, but for now, if you're going to build one, you need the PT100, and they have that in the picture coming out the opposite side of that. And the grub screw to hold that in. Just trying to center that. I think it's the standard PT100 that they've offered before. So just like a thermistor, when you put that grub screw in, don't over torque it and crush the PT100, just enough to hold it in. Okay, so the V6 hot side is assembled. So now we screw that into there. Use a little bit of heatsink compound. Probably should have gotten more paper towel because that's going to be a mess. And we thread that right on it. Other than using the PT100, this is really pretty much identical to any other V6 build. No real surprises here. Just having to keep the wires from running into the bottom of the bracket. Okay. And then I'm going to turn that so that it lines up the way they have it in the document. And there we go. So I have my hot end assembled and attached to the bracket there. Heatsink compound all over my finger. Okay. Fan. First step, feed the temperature sensor through the hole. So we feed this PT100 through. There's a, if I can see the video, I'm trying to hold this up. There's a opening here. You just feed that up through it. And I'm guessing up through the plastic part, but for now we'll just put it here. This is the board for the hot end assembly itself for the tool changer. This is the PT100 board. I hope. Yeah, this is the PT100 board. Clip on the heatsink fan. Where is, I gotta build my fan first. Label faces in. Trying to tell from the pictures if it matters if the kind of flange is up or down. Can't really tell, so we'll go this way. And I need a screwdriver for doing it. Flange up. Okay. Can kind of see that in the picture. My least favorite part of any E3D V6 install are these screws for holding the fans on. Self-tapping screws are just a pain in the butt. So I have the fan like that, Greg, so the flange is up. Is that windings out, label in? I think that matches the picture correctly. Wire at the other top corner. Okay. So you want it like this. So it's coming out the side instead of the top. Cool. So yeah, that's one for the pictures to show a little clearer when you do the final. I know you've said these are just initial ones, but that would be one to make sure is clear. Because I hate these screws and I would hate to have to redo that. Well, Brian, maybe you'll have to tune in for the next video when I do the electronics install, hopefully without a cold. But yeah, you stack them. See, Greg, right there. That's the kind of good input I like to get from these videos. I will make note of that. Yep, I can't get that one all the way in. Yeah, so each board accepts two PT100 sensors, and then you stack the two boards, so you get all four. And that'll be in the next video. Oh, I got 3 of the 4 screws tightened all the way down. The one's a little iffy, but that's okay. So now I got that assembled. Attach the fan, which it appears to point somewhat away from the assembly. Note the wires for the fan pass behind the heatsink and up through the same hole as the PT100 sensor. Which is a tight fit. And up through the plastic part. Next one goes up through the plastic part. There we go. We got two components. Wiring passing up through. Yep, it fits fine, Greg. I wouldn't change that spacing over that. Attach the 30 by 30 by 10 blower fan to the heatsink bracket using an M2 screw. Try and see if I can discern which way the wiring goes here. Looks like it will go like this, so the wire is facing what will be to the back and then feed up through. Yeah, the fan opening faces down, which forces the wire to face forward. So really only one way to go there. If you switched it, it would not be cooling the part. Okay. Pass the wire through the hole in here and up. Okay, so we have our fan attached. Hopefully that's clear. If you guys need it a little closer, I can bring it this way. So that's the fan attached. Got the V6 threaded through. Got our fan there. Okay. We'll knock that down soon. Thanks for joining, 3D Gusner. Okay, let's see. Our next step is the heater wires. Route the heater wires through the hole. And we're clipping those short anyway, so I'm going to grab some side cutters here. And I'm going to go ahead and just cut them pretty far up, but that way and if I need those, Greg, if I need that other end of it, that's fine. I have plenty of spare of these, so I'm not worried about that. I have spare ones, Greg. I have like 6 of these in the drawer beside me, so it's fine. Don't do what I just did, people, if you're building along with me. Oh, I need to go up through the same hole. Sorry, Greg, I assumed that I only needed the 60 millimeter above this. These are a tight bend to get through that same aluminum block hole as the other wires. Yeah, I realized as I was cutting it that I probably shouldn't have cut it. Made an assumption there that other end wouldn't be used, but then it occurred to me, wait a second, maybe it is. Okay. Hey, I got to do at least one thing wrong per video, so it's all good. Okay, route them up through. Cut to 16 millimeters off the top. So I'm gonna lay these out. $60 millimeters. Yeah, I have plenty of spare V6 heater blocks. I switched to the premium cartridges a while ago, so I have lots of the wiring, and I actually have the premium green wiring if I need it too. So yeah, I got to make Greg cringe on something. Strip the ends. That is one thing I didn't think to grab before the video started were wire strippers. So I have to find those real quick. How easy did I make that on myself? Not very. I mean, seriously though, V6 heater cartridge. There's like 3 right here. This drawer is my drawer of heater cartridges and V6 parts. I've got to find my wire strippers here. So I will be just 1 second while I do that. I know what they are in is the good news. The bad news is I gotta find it. They're in a bin with, actually they might be in this drawer. Aha, I actually put them away. They're in my drawer full of crimping tools. Okay. Oops. Never get quite a clean wire strip on these wrap cables. Just cut that excess off. Okay. Top assembly. Gather the parts and 4 M3 30 millimeter screws. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And printed parts. Looks like I need specifically this and this. Feed the wires through the printed PCB support, which is the thinner of the printed parts. Then the PCB goes on. Break off the white tab on the Molex KK connector. Okay. Done. Plug the part cooling fan into the connector as shown. Now there was some concern with polarity on this. I can get a drill. I just need the bolts to pass cleanly through it and not thread through it then. Yeah, the instructions are good when I can manage to follow them and not improvise. Little hobby shop, that's kind of the key. Okay, yeah, I'll need to drill those out slightly then. I can use an 1/8 inch drill, should work. Okay, got a drill. For those that missed the other video where I talked about the printed parts, I printed all of these out of the Snow Labs Carbon Fiber PC Plus, which is the first PC I've printed, and it printed beautifully. Yeah, my Shapeoko enclosure was a fun build just over a year ago now, and has worked very well. I need to add some soundproofing to it, but yeah, that's been fun. So, Greg, are these the only two I need to drill out, or see? It looks like this this has an M2 that taps into it. Do I need to drill out the feet on the smaller part here? Go ahead and start drilling out the other ones. Just get them all done so my wife can have her drill back. You may not need it. Let's see how that works. Oh. Not sure I have a 2.5 millimeter drill bit. What would that be in Imperial? Okay, there's 2 of those. SAE. There we go. What would that size be in SAE unit? Yeah, Dottis, that's Wade from Mandala Roseworks. He's a machinist that doesn't usually deal in metric, and when he customized those parts, he did them himself. If I had done them, they would have been metric, but he had freedom to do those how he was used to, and did them in SAE. Okay, so that should be good for now. I don't have something to drill those out at the moment, but maybe they'll tap in okay. Plug part cooling fan in as shown. Greg, there was some confusion over some of the fans being the polarity reversed. Was that sorted in this? I just downloaded the manual today. You have it coming in, so the red wire from the fan is on the inside towards the center hole. Hey, everything's going fine so far, other than when I cut the red wires when Greg said, no, don't cut the red wires. Everything's been good. Okay. Thanks, Greg. Yep. Thank you. Okay. Plug the temperature sensor and hot end fan. So there is a connector here that says temp. A connector, oh, my fan connector fell back down through the connector that says fan. And then the hot end wires pass through the center opening, or no, through the slot. And go into the screw terminals. There's still just a little bit of a wire wrap there. go. No, I did not put the printed part back on after I drove it. Thank you, Greg. That would have been a mess. Printed part. That's all right. I'm going to slide the hot end wires through first. Temperature sensor, the fan, and the other fan. Twist the ends of these so I don't have any strays. I hate these little screw-in terminals. What is going on? I need to open them up first. That would help. Try this again. Okay. And I always check and make sure I didn't break the solder connections on the back of the green screw-in terminals. Yeah, if I had one more hand, that would be so much easier. But yeah, I always double check that I didn't break the solder free on the back of screw-in terminals after I screw something into them, because it happens. Yeah, just the back of the pins on the green terminal on the board, because I've had those break free before from other boards. And then you have a bad day. Okay. To finish, put the printed support on top of the PCB, and this is the taller one this time. solder. I don't know how you guys in Britain say it. We say solder. And that's how I've always heard it said. Where was I? Okay, so I put that on. It doesn't matter which direction the part is oriented here. Looks like I have it backward to how you have it. So I'll flip it the other direction. Push it in. Actually, no, I had it right the other way because, yeah. So looking at this, it has to go this direction so that the large hole here lines up with the top of the hot end for the PTFE to fit through. One thing I failed to do earlier, and I need some needle nose pliers to do now, is put the PTFE fitting into the top of the hot end. I suspect that'll make a big difference later on. So I'm just going to do that with these real quick. So here's what I'm talking about. If you look from the top, I don't know if you guys can see, but the hot end, the top of the hot end is on this side of the board. So I need to line that opening in the PCB up over the top of the hot end so that I can fit the Bowden tubing in later on, because that'll, I'm sure, be fairly important to the build. Getting the filament to the hot end and all that. Then we put the top clip on, which I assume the openings go up, the open sides face up, it looks like. And then the final piece PTFE fitting faces away from the front, or not PTFE, the, what do you call it? The cable support faces away from the front. So I have the stack is the hot end I assembled, then the short printed support, then the PCB, then the tall printed support, then the cable support. And the M3 bolt fits all the way down through. Where is A? So there's one bolt. It ends up being quite a tall stack of components all fit together here. Two, three, and four. Yeah, I can see that being very handy because then you're just going to pop. There's just a couple connectors here on top. You would pop free, release your Bowden tubing, pull that off, put a volcano or something in, and swap in a new tool, and you're just disconnecting a few connectors at the top of the tool. So there'll be a universal way to swap in and out between tools, that little PCB. Okay, I want to over tighten those, but they're all good and snug. And there we go. We have one fully assembled V6 tool. Except I never put the layer fan on. How did I miss that? Did I scroll down too far at one point? I bet I did. This laptop is not the friendliest to scrolling. Yeah, I just scrolled past the part cooling fan attaching the duct. So to attach the duct, pretty straightforward. It slides in place here. And hopefully this M2 bolt will thread in from the side. It's threading in pretty nicely into the printed part. There. And from the front, there is a countersunk M3 screw. You have us use Loctite on that screw. Is that really necessary when threading into a printed component? Can do it. Won't hurt. If this were a rail core component, it would have a brass insert. Okay, so I put Loctite on it, but he says no Loctite needed, so I'll skip that next time. Can't imagine Loctite helping in a print part. Once again, once the teeth bite, that's threading in nicely. I just got to make sure got a wire that's trying to sneak down in between there. There we go. Almost pinched my thermistor wire or PT100 wires there. Don't want to do that. That threaded great into that printed part. So back to where we were. We now have the 30mm blower shroud attached. Give you guys a little bit more of a close-up here. So you can see the cable clip on top, printed part, PCB, thinner printed part, POM piece, V6, all together. So there is one. Yeah, some Captain there makes sense, and I do have plenty of that around somewhere here. I'll do the same, just to keep the airflow nice and directed. Okay, so that's one. I'm going to go ahead and grab another box and start in on another one. So I have 4 of these to do. You guys are welcome to hang out and chat while I go through them. I don't see any reason why I won't keep live streaming and do all 4, but it's going to be pretty repetitive, obviously. Right now, the only tools are the V6. So I think everybody in the beta is just getting 4 of those, or up to 4 of those. And it is nice. E3D is including a couple spare bolts for each step, so that's been helpful. Just drop those in a Ziploc here and put them with my collection of other spares from this. Okay, scroll back up to the top and start all over. I'm not going to try and do it from memory. All right. Those I can leave in the packages. Get that out of the way. So, Greg, what is the this first threaded grub screw for? What's the point of super gluing in a grub screw there? Just curious. That didn't seem to be used for anything. Oh, never mind. I know exactly what it's for. It's for the magnet for the docks. See, I can figure things out eventually. Apparently that super glue's empty. That is the newer Samsung Galaxy Watch, which, despite a lack of watch apps, I've been quite happy with. I'm not really sure what you would want apps on your watch for to begin with, but it does the things I want, which is it gives me a reminder and I can read it. So yeah, the PCB is just a break in all the wiring, so that you can swap the entire tool end out by disconnecting the Bowden and disconnecting the connections on the PCB. So first step, we bring the grub screw. It's an M6 grub screw down flush with the bottom of that, and set that aside. Since I use super glue, it'll dry pretty quick. You can use thread lock instead. I believe all of the beta has been claimed. Okay, so this one we're gonna change it up. We're gonna build the V6 first and see how that compares. So instead of attaching the V6 to that, I'm going to skip down And we're going to build our heater block first. Set that aside. I didn't open my V6 fixins. That I don't know if the build guide is published in a place where non-beta testers can peruse it yet or not. That's definitely a question for Greg. I have not reposted it, certainly. There you go. So yeah, I think they want to keep this to the beta testers. Although, if I will say you follow my live streams here, I'm literally reading every step of the build guide. So all you're missing are the close-ups of the pictures. I have not skipped. Well, I skipped some steps, but I always go back and find them. So it's all there. Heater cartridge. Again, if you guys weren't here earlier when I was building the first one, we're using the PT100 sensors. I'll crush that. Heat break from the top. And I love that in the pictures in the build guide, Greg used the fancy copper block that says E3D on the side of it. Real nice. And then, my actual V6 tool I got here is just the standard V6 block. Okay, so I'm going to put some heatsink compound on here. Make a mess of everything. Yeah, Greg, I'm just saying, if we're going to be in the beta, you could have thrown in the nicer copper blocks for us. Give us a little bling for the beta units that are going to be on videos and everything all over the place. Okay, so I threaded my heatsink on there. I'm going to go ahead and assemble this. So now I'm going to scroll back up some. Intentionally getting out of order here. You attach the bracket using 2 flathead bolts and some thread locker. Yeah, I'm not even sure, Greg, I don't know if you can confirm or not. Have all of the beta testers received their tool changers at this point? If you want to save that for the update, that's fine too. Okay, so I've assembled the hot end itself. I assembled the tool plate, snug those M3 flathead bolts down into it. And now I will, I'm going to cheat and look off this one here. I want the, I'm going to go ahead and pass the wire up through first, since I have it handy. Mr. Wire up through there, and just simply press this onto here. So I would say between the two, Greg, as far as this goes, I feel this way I'm much less likely to twist or damage the heater cartridge wires. Where when I was spinning it the other way, they kind of bump against the bottom of it, and you know I have these whole big wires to turn, and I'm turning the plate. Just sliding it in and tightening that down is nice, and it's nicely positioned that way. Otherwise, no change. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I think it's slightly easier to do it that way, this way. So now I put the dock bracket on. And again, this is 2 M3 countersunk screws. That would be awesome, Mike. If somebody designs that for me, I will absolutely print that as my first multicolor print. That would be pretty awesome. And yes, Brian, I have thoughts on how this will integrate to the rail core. I mentioned it earlier at the start of the video. I've not decided anything yet because there's just a lot of questions I have about how I want to make it fit. And I need to see, I'm a visual person. I need to see the E3D implementation move and get my mind around it before I really want to dig into how to adapt it. Okay, so now I'm basically caught back up with where I should be. I need to assemble my fan, which I recall from the last one. The orientation is the fan wire to the side, flange to the top. I like the always-on connection for the fan on the rail core because you can't get it wrong. I know it's annoying to hear the fan run when you're not printing, but I don't leave my printers on a lot when I'm not printing. And I find it a lot more reassuring that when I turn on my printer, I hear that fan kick on and I know it's working. If not, often I don't look at my printer when it starts printing. So I may sit at my desk, home and level, heat up, start printing, and come check on it 5-10 minutes later. If for whatever reason your fan is not on, and you check on it 10 minutes later, you have a very bad day. I one time have had a print run until it jammed because the hot end fan wasn't running, and I melted down most of a V6. There was very little usable parts left in it. Man, I hate these screws. So. I should find some M3s and replace these because these are. I don't think I have any right here, or I would. Yeah, no, you can do either one. It's personal preference. As long as you're paying attention and know that fan kicks on at 60 or above, you're good. Just be cautious and make sure the fan's on. Man, I'm gonna go 0 for 4 on this one, aren't I? The heck. Maybe I will find some M3s and try that, because this is not working. Yeah, whatever you guys want to do with that. I mean, that's no harm, no foul, regardless. I've totally stripped out several of these now. I'll break my fan installing it. Seriously. Well, that one's just going to be partially in. I'll find some M3s that I can run in its place. And I'll worry about getting those other two out later. Yeah, it's those self-tapping screws for these fans. I can never get them to thread in nicely. Maybe other people have more luck than I do, but well, Greg pointed out I can use M3s for these. And I have tons of M3 bolts around, so, and these are going in just fine. So I will probably from now on use M3s instead. And that other one I will use an extractor on later and pull it out, because it is in there. It's pulling it. There we go. That can go right in the trash. Stick an M3 bolt in its place. Yeah, I'm just going to do that from now on, Greg. That was a mess. And I think if you go through all my V6 fans, they're all stripped. I do, but they're all just M3 button head, so it's pretty much the same as what you send. Much better. Okay, so I got my fan on, my fan shroud assembled. Click it on. And of course, I'm double checking that my fan shroud is level to the bottom of the heat sink. Hopefully everybody watching knows to do that. Put on the part cooling fan. There it is. I'm going to go ahead and pass these up through now. Without trimming them before I pass them through, because apparently that was the wrong move. Or Greg was just messing with me. I still don't know. And pass the fan through there. Oh, see, Greg, I didn't even know you were just messing with me. I thought I needed some longer cables for later. That's funny. I'll think of a way to pay you back for all this at Murph, by the way. All right. So an M2, I'm going to drop the whole thing. Yeah, I love Murph. Murph, the very first MRF was the second time I had ever seen a 3D printer. Simi CNC took a bunch of their printers to First Fridays event here in downtown Goshen, and showed them on the stage of our theater. And I saw them there and checked them out in between the guys trying to burn down the theater with they had a Tesla coil up on stage that was pulling way too much power for the ancient wiring in that building, and they were trying to set the building on fire, I think. So in between the Tesla coil, they were showing off their Deltas, and I checked those out there, and John Ollie said, hey, we have this event coming up called MRF. Come hang out at our maker space downtown here and help us plan for it. And so I went and hung out at the Maker Hive, which was here in Goshen at the time. They called themselves something else. I forget. I have it somewhere. And they basically were just sitting around planning for this get together, which I thought was a regular thing at that time, but it was actually the very first MRF. And so I sat in the planning meetings for that, and listened to the guys discuss what they were going to do. And so I went to that. It was in Elkhart at the time in a RV factory shop. And saw Lulzbot and Simi CNC, and yeah, I'm on the second one, Steve. This will be a while. I'm slow. I got a cold. But yeah, so I went to the first MRF and saw all the printers there, and I actually found some photos of it the other day. I posted one on Facebook. I found a picture of it was a Winterfell print done in yellow by the guys at Lulzbot, and it was the print that made me realize, oh wow, I want a 3D printer. Not because it was Winterfell, that helped, but because of what I thought was just incredible detail possible from them. Looking at the print now and the pictures of it, we're way past that. But at the time, it was pretty remarkable. So since then, MRF now is in Goshen instead of Elkhart, which I live in Goshen. So it's very convenient for me. And I will definitely be there. It's a great event. This one is not threading in so easily like the last one did. Just trying to get these threads to bite in this plastic, and then it will thread right in, but it's being stubborn. There it goes, finally. I knew once the threads bit, it would thread in no problem. Just took it a while. Well, apparently, Brian, my first print needs to be a 4-color print that says I was in the E3D ToolChanger beta and all I got was this lousy multicolored print, which I think is a genius idea. Okay, so I have both my fans passed through here. I have my thermistor and my heater passed through. So now I need to trim my heater wires, 60 millimeters. Well, I can't really print a Railcore logo on a ToolChanger E3D. I got to wait until I have it on the Railcore to do that. And I will say 60 millimeters does seem to leave some spare wire, so don't worry about cutting those a little long or anything. Strip the ends. Gotta trim all these little bits here. I'm just trimming the red sleeving that didn't cut clean. Be careful not to trim wires. This one's being stubborn. Got a couple strands of the wire tangled up in the sleeving. There we go. There. I do like that Railcore Labs logo that Steve created, though. And we have some plans for that logo other than just having it on the panel due. So keep your eye out for some things coming with that. Okay, scrolling down here. Now we assemble our top, which thankfully I'm already, have this drilled out already. So we put our plastic part on first. Then we're going to pass the hot end wires through and attach those first. Well, I have that twisted enough, but maybe not. I feel like I should have crimped ferrules onto the end of these. I do have some. these tiny little connectors are not terribly friendly to them. So what I'm fighting here is, it's the same camera, probably just a different view, different angle. Oops. What I'm fighting here is when I try and insert the wire into the terminal block, it's fraying just a little bit. I don't want those loose wires poking into the other side. Yeah, it's the same Logitech C920 camera as before. No changes there. That one went right in fine, so. Okay, so hot end first. Now, forgot to break off my little tab here. I'll do that real quick. There we go. Okay, red wire to the center on the thermistor or PT100 wire. Or no, sorry, that's the hot end fan. Temp sensor over here. Saw a comment on one of your videos said it was bad to leave the y-axis linear unsupported. So I've done a number of tests to see if there's any harm in our y-axis. First of all, the E3D ToolChanger uses an MGN9. We use an MGN12, so 9mm wide versus 12mm wide. They also have a slightly longer span than ours. At the distance the rail core spans for its y-axis, we see no evidence that MGN12 deflects. So to test that, what I have done is tried various ways of reinforcing that. I took a spare scrap of 1515 and bolted onto the back of the Y rail on ours, and I also tested with a second piece of MGN12 that's slightly shorter, so it fit between the X brackets, and bolted that on to the back of my rail. All I found in either situation was an increase in mass and ringing from that mass. I did not find any evidence of better or cleaner prints, or any evidence that the original MGN12 had been deflecting in any way. So as far as I can verify, I see no evidence that it's flexing. Okay, so I'm going to double check here. I connected that to the PCB. Hot end, and put my 4 bolts in, and I'm done with tool number 2. I feel the second one went faster than the first one. I'm not sure it did or not, but it seems like it did. One thing I didn't point out, so the build of the ToolChanger has two what they call left-handed and two right-handed tools, just for positioning the tool itself differently. So if you look at the two, I think, wait, are all the tools the same? Maybe all the tools are the same. It's just the docks are different. Maybe. No, all the tools are the same. So anyway, yeah, it should go faster, Greg. You're right. Okay, so there's my first two done. They look identical. All the parts are good. I do think there's a slight advantage to that second way of assembling, as opposed to the first. One thing I am noticing, the front cage of the 30mm blower isn't exactly attached tight. I'll probably put a drop of super glue there to hold that down. Interesting. That's the actual blower fan I'm talking about, not anything to do with the build. Okay, so that's two. Except I forgot once again to put the fitting on there. That is not going to be easy. I'm going to worry about that later. I may have to take that one apart. Okay, so I will remedy that one earlier in the process here. Yeah, I really should, know to do that from the V6, but for whatever reason, I keep forgetting it. So I'm going to do that right now before I go any further. Okay, so first step. Yes, I'm going to follow the guide even though I've built two. Otherwise, I'll do something wrong and Greg will yell at me. Brian, AFAICT is as far as I can tell. A little bit of super glue here on the grub screw. I do use the gel-based super glue. nice and flush. Access super glue wiped up. Okay. Let's see here. Go ahead and attach my V6 dock thread locker. And for those curious, I can confirm, if you haven't seen it elsewhere on the internet, several people have these printing already, and are discovering how the tool changes work and things like that. So there are working tool changers in the beta testing process at this point. Not sure how many people are printing at this point. I know Renee is. I know Michael is. I'm not sure who else. Okay. And I'm going to do this the way I did the second one here. Do the V6 first because I found that easier. And if you're building one of these, do pay attention to which direction the heater block faces out. It makes a difference in how you mount things and how it lines up. I need a PT100 sensor, which goes out the opposite side of the heater block. And a grub screw. It's kind of nice. I needed a bunch of spare thermistors. Now I have 4, so that works out. Look at the bright side, right? Trying to get this lined up where I want it. Okay. Heat break. Well, I expect the Rail Core 2 will be less expensive. The Rail Core 2 has the bed leveling, which if you build your frame square, if you haven't seen our bed leveling, it's pretty awesome. I love it. If not for the E3D beta invite, I would not have used a printer without it, because it makes printing so convenient. I never ever have a question. My first layer will be flat across my bed. It can be a challenge getting your rails aligned to get there, but once you're close, if you take the time, it's something you don't want to give up. Steve just converted his to it and loves it. So we have the bed leveling. We have price. The frame is not quite the same. I'm just making a horrible mess here with this stuff. Heat sink compound. The frame extrusions are not as big, but we integrated our side panels into the frame as a structural component from the start, which makes a frame more rigid. I can say that. The rail core frame is just, really rigid because of the way the side panels are bolted directly to the extrusions as part of the frame build. In addition, I think the rail core will be easier to modify and tinker on because everything pretty much bolts on with M3 hardware. So if you're the tinkering type and like to change things around, it's probably going to be the easier platform for that, where the E3D is more of a here's your machine. It's designed to run this way, and you want to run it that way. It's a different mindset. Certainly, they're using some very nice components. Their rails are all high wind rails or similar quality, where ours are Zyletech. So there's some trade-offs there. I think that would sum it up. They're kind of, I like to say every 3D printer is a series of compromises. You have to choose which components and which quality points matter to you most, and find the printer that the compromises of that printer's design match your compromises most closely, and go with that one. So hopefully that makes sense. I have not fully assembled the E3D to know how much difference the bed leveling will make, to have or not have it. Maybe it's a non-issue. But like I said, I certainly like it on my rail core. I've done the demo multiple times with my rail core where I can have it powered off, spin a lead screw around, power it back on, level, and start printing, and have a perfect first layer, even though I manually, move a lead screw around, which is something you would never do on another printer that has more than one lead screw for the bed. It would be like on the E3D loosening up the bolts that hold the bed to the Z-axis while it's off, and then powering it on and just hitting print. It's one of those things, if you haven't used it, it's hard to explain. I mean, everybody always says I never have to re-level my Z. Well, you probably do it more than you think, and it's nice to have that quality assurance to know it is level. It checks itself. It verifies it's level. It's not I think it's level. But definitely different machines built to different purposes. Assemble the fan. Use my M3 bolts here. Greg, I'm going to start an official petition to just have you guys include M3 bolts instead of the self-tapping. Save everybody headache. hopefully I answered your questions on what I feel the differences are between the two. I'll know more once I start printing. I do think there's going to be some loss of volume, print volume, to the rail core for the ToolChanger. I don't think there will be a loss in functionality, just some X, Y, or Z space, maybe all three. We'll obviously try and keep that to a minimum, but the ToolChanger came out after we had finished the design, so it was not built with this in mind. Now, once we know what that volume loss is, it may be something where in a future update, if it's mostly X and Z, we can extend those axes and gain some of that space back. Sure, I gotta have something to talk about while I'm doing this. Yeah, as far as printer designs go, I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect printer, and certainly not perfect for everybody. So probably what we'll do is the same as all the other rail core parts. I'll test it on my 250 here, which is my beta platform, and that will live actually where the laptop is that my webcam is running on, and the ToolChanger will live here, and I'll have them kind of side by side, and I'll adapt it to that. And once I feel the functionality is as good as I can get it, it will involve some milled parts, so we'll get those. Start with printed parts and move to milled as we have to. Once we have those ready, it'll be a release the design, release the parts, and let people have at it. I do not yet have an extra ToolChanger for that. So Sanjay had talked to me before the beta started, or when I was accepted into the beta, about the possibility of getting some extra ToolChanger parts for the rail core to test. I've asked about that a couple times now, and currently they're waiting to make sure everybody who is participating in the beta sorry, gets all their ToolChanger components before they allocate any for anything else. So I need one more V6 and one ToolChanger part. And still waiting to find out when that'll happen. Feed these up through here. And obviously, if those of you who have a rail core will know, the y-axis is going to need some pretty significant changes in order to work with the ToolChanger. I do think having looked at it so far, I don't want to speak too out of turn, but from what I have seen, the V6 docks themselves that hold the tools, so the part these rest on, will fit on the rail core. I think they'll mount to the 1515 just fine. We might need to modify the dock plate, this piece here. We'll definitely need to modify that, I think, to fit on the 1515 appropriately. But I don't see that as being a major hurdle to get around for attaching those. Mostly that's going to need to be adjusted to, it's a different rail. They're attaching it to a plate, the top plate, where we're attaching it to a rail. And the height may need to change, because that's a real question I have, is how the height of all of this will match up between the rail core and the ToolChanger, to get everything to line up so the tools can be picked up will be interesting. Hopefully this threads in quicker than the last one did. There we go. No, now that I think about it, on the third one here, if I check, I have an M3 tap somewhere right beside me. Yeah, so we're going to use the same servo is the plan. I want to keep as much compatibility as I can, and that's going to be a real challenge to get that servo to match up. That pin length is the biggest question I have, and I'm not sure I can get somebody to manufacture one of those pins that's a custom length. I was waiting until I saw the beta to decide, okay, what's that pin look like? How's that need to be adapted? I've now seen it. They're getting those machined is a real trick. Wade has a new lathe, but that pin is something else. It's actually drilled and tapped into the end of the pin, which would be a heck of a challenge. Not saying Wade couldn't do it. I haven't talked to him about it yet. Okay, let's see here. No, so that is one change that's most likely to happen. I've mentioned it before. The Y rail will probably flip 180 degrees. All the tools will mount on the right side of the printer, above the electronics box. That is almost definitely going to be the case. And there's actually a couple reasons for that. Oh, so the rail is facing up. That may happen, but if we do that, then we'll probably need a spar underneath the rail, because it may deflect in the center down when the thinner cross section is vertical. So wonder why I just dropped. A little bit of concern around deflection if we switch that so it's facing the other direction. Yeah, and you actually don't have to support the entire extent of the rail, so it doesn't have to attach into the X brackets to take deflection out of the center, as long as it attaches near the ends. So it's possible we could get around it that way. The problem is the more we do something like that, the more bulk we add, the harder it is to position everything. If we put the 1515 under it, then I showed it earlier in the video, the ToolChanger's not in here now, but where the pin for the servo crosses is pretty close under that rail, and there's 2 gears that have to fit in there. So it's pretty thin. It doesn't leave a lot of space there for doing things. So probably what we'll do is something where we have our plate and then we mount their plate to it to lower things. It's going to cost some Z, and then we'll have either their rear plate or a shorter rear plate that attaches with the servo going through. We'll see. I'm speculating there. I really don't know what it's going to look like yet. I have all the CAD models from E3D. They're being very generous with the beta, and they gave us the full CAD models. We can't share them yet, but when I get to the point of trying to figure that out, I'll have all of that to play with. I just need to see it working first. That on. And this one connector is really not wanting to, it's for the fan. On something, what's going on? Just trying to pull this connector up through here. There we go. There we go. Okay. So we put our printed part on, thin one first, then pass our hot end connections up through the center slot. Loosen these screws out. Make sure no wires are trying to escape here. this one just a little bit long. Okay, got the hot end connected. Break off a piece of plastic. Red wire to the center. Temperature sensor in this side. Fan in this side. And there we go. We have another one assembled. Just need to tuck the wires down in there. I don't like how that went. When I push that down, the heater wire is pushed up. I see a stray wire. I'm going to deal with that now. One wire tried to escape out of this heater connection. Still is. And just to head off the thought for anybody thinking that's watching or that watches this in the future, never ever tin your heater connection wires. It's a recipe for a meltdown. You can crimp a ferrule on them, but don't tin them. Okay. So now the taller block, which has cutouts that match the wiring pins. So the question there is how important the X, Y, and Z volume is to you. Because again, that's still a real unknown for us, and I don't know how much we're going to lose. It's not a question of if, it's a question of how much. And so if you need the full 300, 320-ish of the rail core, then you should probably wait and see if we have to do an amended, ToolChanger specific to get that volume. And I have, that'll be quite the delay, because you'd be looking at the delay for the ToolChanger plus, the learning curve of that, plus how long it takes us to design a new X-axis. And Steve and I both have full-time jobs, so that could take a while. If you don't absolutely need 300, and you can live with 270, 300, or something smaller, and those are just estimates. I have no idea. If that build volume isn't as critical for you, then I would get one now, and get used to the platform, like Brian says. Especially if you're not familiar with the Duet, and you're not familiar with a Core XY, and you want that experience before the ToolChanger. You'll get better prints out of the ToolChanger when you add it to it, I think, for having that experience. Speaking of changes required to the rail core, so we have these aluminum lie plates. This is one of the prototype solid ones. They're much lighter now, that we have coming out. Those will not be compatible with the ToolChanger, nor will the lightweight BMG mount that just came out from 713 Maker, nor will obviously the V6 hot end mount that Wade makes. Those are not going to be ToolChanger compatible. So if you get those, keep that in mind. Okay, there's 3 of them. They look roughly identical, so that's a good sign. 1 to go. And as far as the ToolChanger and all that goes, I have no idea on an ETA from my own perspective when I will have that working with my rail core, when I'll have parts modeled. This is not my full-time job. That's why I'm building this on a Sunday afternoon. So I do have to work around my work schedule. And the beginning of the year is the busier time for my new job. So, yeah, I'll have to work around that. But that job pays the bills and lets me do stuff like this, so. That was the part I was looking for, putting the PTFE fitting in the top of the heatsink first. Okay, last one. I will throw out there, I don't have any question the ToolChanger is going to work on the rail core. I don't think it's going to be a major redesign or anything to make it work. At the point, it'll look similar enough and easy enough to bolt on that I think we're going to get there without too much headache. I haven't seen anything in the design that makes me go, oh, what? Wait, we can't do that. No signs of incompatibility anywhere. We will fall into the same situation with the PT100 sensor, though, since that's part of the V6 dock constraint. If you have a rail core and you want to put it on or put a ToolChanger on, at some point you're going to need the PT100 sensors. Whether you want to do that now or later doesn't matter, but you're going to need them at some point. I don't know what to compare the weight of one to. They're not too bad, really. Greg, if he's still listening, could chime in. I'm not supposed to share specs. I'm not supposed to share CAD drawings. I'm not supposed to, well, I assume I'm not supposed to say my caliper. In my experience, my calipers show this part is 61 millimeters across. So I'm not sure if I can weigh one of these tools and give a weight on it or not. I would have to read the NDA, or hopefully Greg will chime in and say if that's within the rules of the NDA. And most of that, the NDA is around not setting expectations before the release. You know, they want people to understand this is beta, things are subject to change. So they don't want people, you know, machining parts to match up to it, or competitors making compatible parts and then, you know, they have to change something because of feedback in the beta. So, okay, I'll grab a scale here in a minute if I can find. My daughter uses it to weigh her guinea pigs, so I have to find our small scale, and then I can I'll weigh one of them. And Brian, the comparison is going to be more to our entire y-axis versus their y-axis plus, or their x-axis plus a tool. So it's going to be a tough one to draw an exact comparison. Touch this. I have not weighed the entire y-axis separate. I've taken components off and weighed them individually, and we've added those up, but I haven't weighed the entire y-axis on its own. So the way things work between us and Project Red, Jay, Steve, White, and myself are the Railcore designers. It's an open source design, which consists of all the models, the Fusion 360 design, bill of materials, and the documentation. Project Red, we work with closely, but they spec and source the kit to what they choose. So they choose the particular components, like they have the IR probe, now they're going to the BL Touch. That's up to them. The build tag bed that they ship is up to them. We don't, you know, have any control, or, you know, we have input. They'll listen to us, but they, you know, they have the freedom to do what they want. Same thing on distribution. We have the ability to make suggestions of, hey, you should look into shipping into Europe. Of course, they're already looking into that. But that's completely him and his business. And so he's working with someone. He's had conversations with at least 2 companies that I know of. But he has not finalized anything yet. He was hoping maybe by the end of January at one point that printers would be on a boat headed that direction. But that was not a hard and firm date. That was a, hey, hoping this works out and this could be the time frame. I haven't seen any updates to say that he's any closer or further away than that. So not really much of an answer other than it's really a question for him. And I don't think he's going to make a firm commitment that it's happened until they're on the boat and headed that direction. And there's a lot that goes into that. Some of the components are very heavy, so I know he was looking at maybe those need to be made over there. Some of the components like the Duet are made over there anyway, so does it make sense to buy a Duet in the US, ship it, over there, or does it make more sense for that reseller to purchase them and add them to the kit there? Yes, it is a Metal Gear servo. It is, I don't know if you can see that, HS70MG servo. If you've done anything with RC cars, those are a very nice servo. My last PT100 sensor. No, those are not cheap servos either. I was a little shocked at the price of the ToolChanger component of this, the actual ToolChanger part itself, which covers the 2 metal plates and the bits to fit it. And then I saw, okay, that's an expensive servo, and the machining on the parts, especially that pin, is quite something. So I absolutely understand the cost. I'm not saying I like the cost, but I understand. And I'm just using all the 0.4 nozzles that came with it. I do have a whole collection of different nozzles, hardened steel, different sizes. My intent, once I get this running, is to quickly swap out a couple of the nozzles for some different ones. But it seems to make more sense to let's get some consistent prints with just multicolor 0.4 nozzles, same filament, so I'll start nice and simple. Thread on my heat sink. Oh, I shouldn't have put that on. So I have two rail cores. They both have a BL Touch on them. I like the BL Touch when it works well. And so what we've discovered is most of the BL Touches are good if they're the genuine ones. And you can get really good repeatability. 0.02 over and over again is not impossible. 0.01 is certainly possible. That's what I get on both of mine. But every once in a while, someone will get a BL Touch that's more like 0.25 or 0.3 repeatability probe to probe. And it's the BL Touch, not the printer. And that's obviously unacceptable. So the BL Touch really depends on which one you get. Some people like the piezo. Waiting to see on that one with the rail core. I'm not fully convinced it's the right solution yet. And I would never ship the piezo as a consumer kit version because it is finicky to configure. I've not used inductive sensor myself, so I can't comment on those. That said, for the ToolChanger, specifically for the Railcore ToolChanger, what we'll use is none of those. So for the Railcore based ToolChanger, we will use two micro switches. One micro switch similar to what E3D does, which is mounted to the bottom of their X carriage. It'll be the bottom of our what we call our Y carriage. Put the fan on sideways. And Steve in our Facebook group just posted a manual way to set your Z probe offset a little quicker. Man, I put this fan totally on backward while I was talking. That method of installing the or setting your Z probe offset a little bit quicker using a tool offset is leading into he's testing using a micro switch to do automated Z height tool offsets. So for the rail core bed leveling procedure, you'll home Z and do the bed leveling with a micro switch, and then do a offset per tool with a different micro switch that is statically mounted to the yokes. Nope, no retractable switch needed. So the switch for bed leveling and homing will mount to the bottom of the Y carriage, just like E3D does. And when you have no tool selected, it's the lowest thing on your Y carriage. So you can do your homing and bed leveling and all of that with that switch. And then when you pick up a tool, it's not in the way because the tool is longer than it is. The second one that you use for setting your tool offset has to have a static height difference between the bed surface and that switch. And so by mounting it on the yokes, as long as you set your tool offsets after you've leveled, homed and leveled, and you don't change your bed surface for a different, height surface, then or massively adjust your yokes, tighten the bolt holding the bed to the yoke or anything. Those are the only times you would have to do a paper test and or reset the height of that offset. So it should be pretty much for most use, you set it once and never have to touch it again. Or I shouldn't say never, but rarely have to touch it again. Okay, got my V6 installed. Got my fan installed. I gotta do my layer fan now. So these little blower fans are the layer cooling fans, yes. It's a little 30 by 30 by 10 blower, which I need to find where to get these. Or Greg, maybe E3D will be selling these, maybe, Illustrator, because I've been wanting to experiment with these, and it's hard to find a 24 volt 30 by 30 by 10 blower with ball bearings. I've been looking. Oops. Don't know if Greg's still around or not, but yeah. So my thought with these for the stock rail core build, I wonder if there's a way to get two of them side by side, one on each side of the V6. So you'd have two fan shrouds, one pointing from each direction. Hey, Greg, do you guys plan to sell these little 30 by 30 by 10 24 volt blowers at some point, separate from the rest of this? Cool. Always screwdriver. Let me see how quickly I can find an E3 tap, because this is just a pain. And I know it's my last one, but I should have a tap right here. Actually, it's probably in this drawer. Oh, hey, there's the torque wrench I was looking for. That's my Venzo torque wrench I was talking about earlier. I love that thing. No luck on an M3 tap, though. Oh, it's worth a look. So yeah, this is the torque wrench. Has a nice little dial set for 2.5 Newton meters of torque. That I will put the link for that torque wrench in the comments of this video, or the description after I'm done. Yeah, I think they're like $45 or something on Amazon. That's a nice little fan shroud you guys designed, by the way, Greg. I like it. The thing's running around on me while I'm trying to feed these wires through. I think I was right the first time to cut these short. Okay. Oh, I don't know what I said, Greg. So could the rail cord be built mirrored so the electronics box is on the left? Maybe? Probably? Haven't really thought it through, but I don't know of any reason why not. Some of the wiring might be a little interesting. Holes in the panels and such. Would be most of the reason. Otherwise, I think it's pretty arbitrary. Ken Rice switched his lead screw, so he had two on the right, one on the left. Wasn't sure if he moved his electronics box or not. Oh, there he is. And if oh, okay, so you're gonna, did you already invert the y-axis then? Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's a pretty flexible design as far as that stuff goes. It's all open. Not sure too much would even need to be modified to do that. Okay, let's see. So we got our layer fan on, trimmed our hot end wires, printed parts. And I'm going to do the same as before. I'm going to do the hot end wires first. Find that a little easier. Watch the wire go stray on me.
I figured they'd be open. Before.
Nope, these are too long. Got another stray wire. Really should have just put ferrules on these and been done with it. Okay, so I got that all connected. Break off my plastic bit here. Connect the fan. Connect my temp sensor. Connect my other fan. Push all that wiring mess down in there. Second printed part on top. And my final printed part facing that crack. Facing back towards the plate. Yeah, this is like the last 4 bolts here, and I'll be done with this step. So let's go ahead and start talking about the next step. The next step will be the electronics install itself. It's the final step of the documented build guide. The last part of that is, of course, the smoke test. These install on the printer as part of that step. So I will be live streaming that sometime soon. I have a few more printed parts I've still got to get done. I have a lot of them actually sitting right here beside me, but I have two printed parts to finish up, and then I'll do the electronics and power on smoke test for smooths. And I will live stream all of that, including the smoke test, so we can see if I set anything on fire. I've yet to fry anything powering on a printer for the first time, so see if that holds true. Probably just jinxed myself there. So this week for work, I am traveling at least 2 days. The following week, I'm traveling a couple days. Hopefully, if not on a weeknight this week, next weekend at the latest, I will do the electronics section. I've got to get those prints done first. And with the traveling this week, I don't know how much printing I can get done. So we'll play that by ear. But hopefully, certainly by next weekend, I should be able to do the live stream of the final part of the build, which is electronics wiring. So this took a little while longer than I had originally hoped, but that's what I get for building stuff when I have a cold. Thanks everybody for following along. If anybody has any questions before I sign off, now would be the time. Thanks everybody for hanging out through the build. It's been a lot longer build than I thought it would be. I'll put a link for the torque wrench in the comments. I'll also put a link to donate to the R&D of the rail core itself and the ToolChanger build in the comments. Otherwise, thanks again to everybody who stuck around. Thanks to E3D, Greg especially, for hanging out and keeping me straight on this. Once again, thanks to Duet, Phyllis Schroeder, everybody who donated and helped with this. We're getting there. We'll have it built pretty soon. So again, next live stream probably next weekend. Would be the most realistic expectation for it, and we'll get this thing wired up and powered on. Thanks everybody, and have enjoy the rest of your Sunday.